Hi Warblux, thanks for the video. So if I understand you correctly, your point basically is that if basically in a social democracy, as you called it, the theory would have to be that there's enough good people to bring the pressure to bear to keep the villainy in check. To identify what counts as villainy and so on and so forth. So and then, so really, in any system or in an anarchy, you still need a good amount of people, and they'll bring the pressure to bear. Why would they not bring the pressure to bear? And the issue is that's true. Given that situation, they will bring the pressure to bear, and they'll bring it to bear by instituting some sort of standards and laws. Now, people are relatively, we're animals. I mean, if you go back into the state of nature, and we would deal with a lot of villainy by just getting out of that situation. You get away with it. You don't view the or maybe someone would view the predators as a kind of villain, and basically you leave that area. But of course, with certain technology and certain attitudes, no, you go clear the area of those villains. And I see it somewhat like this. Let's say you had a long line of men, 1,000 men, thousands and women, and you give each one a board, maybe two or three boards and some nails and a hammer, and they go to the site and they're supposed to just add that much to a house. It starts out with nothing, but they start to build it. It gets up. It gets to be something to build onto. People start building more and more um, onto the structure, and that's how you build a house. And it would be a mess, but it would work. Parts of it would stand. You might say, oh, well, no, eventually you'd get a good house there because the parts that were really weak, they'd collapse and then they'd get rebuilt. And since you have this line of men that just and women that goes on forever and ever, eventually, they just keep working on it, and make a house. It's just that that's not a very efficient way to build a house. We've already built millions of houses over and over, and so therefore we know certain things about structure, and it's better to have a plan when you're going to build something if you want it to work well. So yeah, there's the pressure is there, but the other problem is that good people go by the rules, and if they get screwed over and they feel like, well, that's not fair, but it was by the rules, so I guess that's fair, they react that way. So they need a structure, a framework in which it's understood that no, it's not okay to work kids 80 hours a week when they're 11 years old, dyeing shoes different colors for the market. No, that's not okay. And you have certain standards where you have figured out what works and what doesn't from an engineering point of view. And it's not like you're imposing one person's view on another unless you're trying to call things engineering that are just opinions. But engineering can be demonstrated that one thing was safe and one thing fell. It can be controversial. If you do too much standardization, it can inhibit, innovations, engineering innovations. So obviously you have to, and this is the great thing about the realm of private control of stuff is in a private control you give people a chance to do something new. You might not be able to have a new kind of electrical engineering. Oh, thank you. You might not be able to have a new kind of electrical engineering just plug into the power grid because there's going to be all these standards of safety. And maybe you have a better system and people will just be using government to slow you down and say, oh, it's unsafe. And really, it's just a business tactic of theirs. But on your private property, you can build a little electric, system, and you can show how your system works. And and so you have to allow people to do that as well. But you still are going to have some principles that you can apply. We know that people should not be landlocked. We do not need to go back to an anarchist system where it's still to be resolved whether you can be landlocked, where we just rely on that your neighbors to allow you to get to and from your property. It's like, no, your neighbors have to allow you to get to your property. Part of their property is the fact that it has to be crossed to get to your property. So anyway, it's an interesting point, and I do agree with the principle. I agree that pressure is always there. That we're not really trying to make a system that makes people good. You could never do that. Any system relies on good people, and that's why the main political action, for the long or even the medium term, is philosophical, and artists do this. There's philosophers and people that you could just call philosophers come up with ideas that help change the world by changing attitudes about how we look at the world. Artists are among those people and happen to appreciate those kinds of people, and they put this sort of new ideas into their art, and that's how it spreads out to the populace. That's my theory. Or anyway, that's what I think we should do.